I'm Juliette Birch, co-curator of short films at Filmfest DC. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Nicole Ballivian, and whose film is Joe and the Shaw, and it's featured in our Shortcuts presentation. Also, we are very much hoping to have with us Stenzin Tankong, whose film Sequel is also in that program. He is Zooming in from Mumbai. We're having a few technical difficulties, but we're hoping that he will join us momentarily. But we just thought we'd begin. So the Shortcuts program is featured on our virtual platform and available for view on the film via the virtual platform of Filmfest DC through from October 7 to October 11. So as I said, the beautiful thing about the virtual program, even though we miss our in-person experience, is that we are able to have filmmakers do these interviews with us from all over the world. Just as a way of a brief introduction, Nicole is joining us from the West Coast. She is a Sundance screenwriter, fellow, and director. Her screenplay, Sleeping on Stones, was selected for the Sundance Rawi Screenwriters Lab. Nicole also wrote and directed a feature film, Driving to Zigzag Land, a Palestinian-American comedy that's been featured in over 100 film festivals and won international awards. And it's our great hope that Stenzin Tankong will also be zooming in from Mumbai momentarily. This is Stenzin's 5th short film, and his first based fully on his native land. Stenzin belongs to the Changpa nomad tribe of the remote Himalayan region of Ladakh. Apart from directing and writing his own films, Stenzin also works as a freelance assistant director in Mumbai, with projects ranging from feature films to television commercials. So we're crossing our fingers. Stenzin, you'll be with us in a moment. In the meantime, we will begin. These two films are very different, but both very personal stories of identity. I wondered if, Nicole, you could just start by asking us how you came to, telling us how you came to this story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I came about to the story when I found Deanna Kelli Sayed's blog that the film script is based on. And I fell in love with it because I could relate to it as a Muslim woman who's not noticed because I don't wear the hijab, but also because I tend to not look, ethnically Muslim as a stereotype. And so I found that event that happened to her in the story actually pretty hilarious and something that I could relate to. So I reached out to her and told her I wanted to make a short film about it. Very
good. And I read the blog post. It's really fantastic. And her story ends with Joe saying, hey, do you realize that your phone number has the mark of the beast? Which I just loved that. But that's the ending for her story. But you extended the story a little bit. Can you tell us about that narrative choice?
Yes. Okay. So that is a blog and scripts. As a screenwriter, you have a structure that you have to follow. And you do have to have, when you're writing a narrative, you do have to have conflict. I decided at the end, presenting the conflict at the very end of the film, even though it's not in the blog, would actually open up to have more discussions about even more issues that the blog had actually presented, which is, interfaith and, religion and concepts of God and language and, just different things that we could talk about more. When you present more conflict, you have more things to talk about and things to tackle.
I'm interested in asking you about empowerment in that regard, because I sort of felt like the end of the blog post was, yeah, I'm not going to see eye to eye with this guy. But the end of the film has Joe in flight. And tell us a little bit about the empowerment perspective of that.
Yeah, I mean, the film got into Vox Feminae as the world premieres, so I think that does say something about, I didn't even actually realize it was talking about female empowerment. I think it was more of response to the ridiculousness of what Joe was how Joe had to keep being closed in his stereotype towards Kelli. And at the very end, she's like, yes, in the blog, it's, kind of like let bygones be bygones. But in the film, we have Kelli, yes, empowering herself and saying, you know what, if he's going to go with this, then I'm just going to go and take it all the way and get a little laugh out of it. And sometimes, not all Muslims in America tend to not do that. Obviously, we don't take the liberty of just, we could easily get into a lot of trouble if we joke like that. But, I thought that was something from my perspective, and maybe from some, Muslim or anybody who's a minority's perspective. If somebody keeps pushing on the stereotype and just doesn't want to humanize you in any way, then why not have some fun with the stereotype that they're trying to propagate?
Well, that leads right into another question I have for you, which is about tackling difficult subjects with humor. Talk about that, because that's a theme in both this film and Driving to Zigzag Land.
Yeah, it is a lot easier to talk about religious issues, political issues, stereotypes when you're presenting it as a joke. Also, the truth is pretty funny, right? So when I came upon this blog, the reason why I laughed was because it was absurd. And it was funny. It was absurd. The character was absurd because, I believe most people don't have this perspective. And, all you have to do with this character is just change it a little bit over the top, and it becomes actually quite funny. So I did that with Zigzagland, to tackle some issues about the Palestinian occupation, about Palestinian identity, about American immigration to the US, and what that American dream means, which tends to be really a sad issue when you come to this country and you realize that the American dream isn't really true, but we could laugh about it and laugh about the people that we come into contact with on that pursuit. So with Joe and the Shawl, we had a lot of really intense things to talk about, and I was lucky that Deanna was also a humorous writer, and that I could take that and just kind of expand from what she wrote.
And I don't know if, during the pandemic, you've been able to be at a lot of live screenings of your film, but I'm kind of curious to know how men have responded to the ending of this film.
I actually haven't had much feedback from the men. I actually have a lot of feedback from Muslims who like it, and they find it very funny, and they like the fact that I've touched on a lot of, Deanna and I have touched on a lot of the issues that pertain to Muslims, religion, stereotypes, and trying to hide your identity in a place that might not be so, comfortable to be Muslim in, which is, the South, where her alarm goes off in her phone and she's like, oh my God, I've been outed. And then it's kind of like a little bit of a sigh of relief that he doesn't know what that is. So in terms of how men have responded, I haven't had any actual differentiation in the responses between the sexes. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is just like the sort of, there's a delightfully emasculating element at the end for that particular character, and maybe that particular kind of character. We're all sort of satisfied to see him a little bit get his comeuppance in that moment.
Yes.
The film is interestingly titled to me, Joe and the Shaw. It's from the perspective of the male character. It's Joe and the Shaw, not Kelli and the Shaw. And then also, I'm really interested in your choice of the word Shaw instead of hijab. So if you would talk about that.
Sure. It is Joe's perspective. It's Joe and the shawl because Joe has the issue with the shawl. So it is his perspective, although Kelli is, you know, I consider them both leads, you know, characters. The specific reason why I called it SHAWL is because I attended, when I went to university, I actually wore the hijab for a few years. And I was in film school, and one of my professors actually referred to me as the woman in the shawl. And me and my best friend got a kick out of that, like throughout the whole semester, because he would call people by their names,
Except
but he would refer to me, yes,
you.
he would refer to me, yes, as a woman in the shawl. So
For you, it's all about what you were wearing.
yes, yes. And so this was very personal to me, and it was very, you know, when Joe in the film sees Kelli in the license plate, it's like that initial shock. I think everybody has a little bit of a response to the hijab, and it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It's kind of a response of like, oh, that person's Muslim, obviously, but how you take it is different. And even those of us who tend to be progressive, it kind of examines our latent, you know, biases,
Yeah, absolutely.
stereotypes. And so, yeah, at the university, I was called as the woman in the shawl. And, you know, I could have gotten angry about it, but me and my friend would just crack up because, and then he wouldn't even like use the proper term like hijab. He would just call it a shawl. And I found it a very...
Which sounds very grandmotherly to me. That's something I want to wrap around my 96-year-old mom, a nice
yes.
warm shawl.
Or babushka, the woman in the babushka.
Right, yeah. Well, it really does, you know, that story from college really does direct you back to there's something really painful under that. And you could have really embraced that pain of not being seen when it seemed that the people around you were being seen, being called by their names.
Yeah.
But you embraced the humor of that is involved in disconnection, and
yeah,
you know, it's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, well, it was a better option. It was in the 90s, so you know, I'm dating myself, but in the 90s, you didn't have the internet in college. Okay, so there was a totally different, you know, way of thinking. Now, if you call, the professor would call a student a woman in the shawl, you'd get into a lot of trouble because we're a lot more aware of things around us in our world. But you know, I would go in the university itself, and it was in Washington, D.C. I would go into an elevator in the 90s because we had the situation in the World Trade Center. I would walk into the elevator and people would back up, you know, because they just they don't really see hijab. So, you know, calling me a woman in the shawl was a funnier version of, you know, somebody actually being afraid of me, you know. So
yeah. Can you talk about the casting of the film?
Yeah. Travis is Joe. Travis, Lincoln Cox, and Jill Galbraith is she is Kelli, and they were both cast here in Los Angeles. I probably auditioned probably a selection of about 100 actors, male and female, and had them come in and do auditions and callbacks and second callbacks. And I worked with different males and females together. And it really came down to their acting and their ability, even though they weren't Muslim or they weren't, you know, familiar with these specific type of struggles. There's just actors that can absorb and are open to this mindset, and they become the best actors. You know, they can absorb these struggles even though they haven't gone into them, because they have like an openness and an empathy. And so they were both amazing, and we went through rehearsals, and actually Jill is from Northern California and Travis is from Utah, and he is Mormon. So that was, and very practicing Mormon. Yeah. And so, you know, we had to discuss like certain things because, you know, there's a stereotype also for the right-wing Christian, you know, issue, which is a bit of a struggle for somebody who's a practicing Christian to also watch this film too and say, hey, we're not all like that. Absolutely. Right. You know.
So he was able to bring that, you know, to his role, like his,
yes,
in a way, his empathy, but also being able to, you know, stand outside and play the part of someone who lacks empathy and fears the other.
Yes, which
He's
is
been on the other end of that.
farthest from his
Yeah.
religion, right?
Wow. Very
Yeah,
interesting to
yeah,
know that.
yeah.
Wow. So, and they both embrace these Southern characters very well. I really enjoyed that. There's, it's just the accent. I like the specifics of the accent, especially the pronunciation of the word battery.
Yeah,
Battery.
battery.
It was almost like a Scottish brogue.
Yeah. Yes, they went and studied the North Carolinian accent.
Yeah,
So YouTube is fantastic for that. They even have
really,
tutorials.
yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I really felt like not just the South, but this region of the South,
Yes.
that was
Yes.
really strong.
Yes, yes.
So,
and there was an actual tow truck driver. If you go to YouTube and you look up North Carolina tow truck driver Bernie Sanders, there's actual tow truck driver who denied a tow for somebody who had a Bernie Sanders bumper sticker. And so that was really funny too, because it was based on real life. So
wow, so you could really kind of, that hit home.
Yeah.
What do you think about the influence specifically of Southern culture in the way the story unfolds? And I guess I'm thinking, I lived in the South for a while, and I found it the warmest place. It was very easy to make friends, a big initial warmth. But underneath that, we did still need to eventually navigate our differences. What do you think about that, the Southern quality of your story, specific versus it taking place in Northern California?
I'm originally grew up in Virginia, but I grew up in, the DC area. And Deanna allowed me to take her Southern story and turn it into film, which I'm grateful for. What I learned really from the South was from, talking to her and learning from her blog. In terms of the warmth, yes, there is that initial warmth. There is that like warmth between Kelli and Joe.
And there's
that, yes, there's that flirtation. There's that, hey, you look like you have a face of an angel. I don't know how many men would actually tell you that, but that said, in the South, like, I don't know how many men would actually tell you that in the metropolitan areas, in this day and age. So there is a warmth to that. There is a warmth between Kelli and Joe in the film, and it's really an unfortunate, what unravels. So, yeah.
These interviews go by so fast. We're almost at the end of our time. I can't believe it, and I'm sad about it. It's a delight to talk to you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about any new projects you have coming up, current projects?
Well, the pandemic has us filmmakers all writing like crazy. So I have 3 screenplays I'm rewriting at the same time, which is interesting, having a 3-year-old in the house at the same time. So so I have a film. I did a teaser for called The Hydra. It's a story of a Bosnian American girl who's leaving U.S. to join the man she loves in Raqqa, Syria, ISIS, based on a lot of the true stories that came out of all the Western women that, had to in a situation and Sleeping on Stones is a story of an American Jewish settler who came to Palestine and grew up to be an Israeli conscientious objector.
Intense subject matter, and it sounds very interesting. We've lost you for a moment there, Nicole.
Oh, sorry.
Back with us now. Yeah,
I'm
you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I want to, one last question.
Yes.
If people are interested in seeing your feature film, Driving to Zigzag Land, is that available to view? And
I can make it available, yes. It's on Vimeo. So if you go to vimeo.com/bintfilm, you can see Driving to Zigzag Land on there. I'll have it open for a time.
It's a really interesting film. I encourage our watchers to take a look and increase their fandom of Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Juliet.
Yeah, on behalf of Filmfest DC, I want to thank you for being with us. And I thank you once again for sharing your film with us at the festival this year. We wish you all the best on your future projects. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in and watching this recorded interview. We do have 2 other recorded interviews from the short cuts filmmakers, so please take advantage of those. They're on the Filmfest DC website as well. And enjoy the rest of the festival. And on that note, we say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.